morning students. Today I am going to continue the chapter Sectors of the Indian Economy. In previous video I explained you about comparing the three sectors, that is primary, secondary and tertiary. Then I explained you about advantages of final counting goods and services. Then I explained you about gross domestic production, that is GDP. Now today I will explain you about historical change in sectors, that how sectors has changed in so many years. It is evident that most of the developed countries have gone through historic changes in the economic sector. The importance and dominance of economic activities had gradually shifted from primary to secondary to tertiary sectors. That means all the developed countries of today were agrarian countries, means farming countries. Once upon a time, and then industrialization shifted the economic activities from primary sector to secondary sector. Because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, factories came up and started expanding. People who have earlier worked on farms now began to work in factories. In the past 100 years, there has been a further shift from secondary to tertiary sector in developed countries. The service sector has become the most important in terms of total production. The shifting of economic activities does not mean complete elimination of previous sectors, but the importance and dominance of next sector is increased. As this farming economy shifted to industrial economy in developed countries, this may be also applicable for all developing countries, including India. During 1950s and 1960s, Indian economy developed on agricultural and other primary activities. And now, tertiary sectors and service sectors related activities have dominant contribution in GDP. In developed countries, most of the working people are employed in the service sector. In India, between 1973 and 2003, the production in all three sectors has increased substantially, but most in the tertiary sector. So, in this years, so many years, many changes we can see. So, if we look the history of developed countries in the past 100 years, we find many changes regarding the place of different sectors in the economy. Primary sector was the most important sector in the economy of modern developed countries in the initial stages of their development. Gradually, improvement had taken place in the methods and techniques of farming. It raised the output of agriculture products, especially the food grains. This had promoted supported many activities in the economy, especially the activities related to crafts, trading, transporting and administration, etc. Primary sector had the largest share in total production and total employment of the country. As the development took place, new methods, techniques and machineries were introduced in the manufacturing sector of these countries. As a result of it, new factories were established and they started to expand rapidly. Now, workers began to migrate from farm to factories. A large number of people started to work in factories as workers. The production of manufactured goods had also increased on a large scale. Now people could enjoy more goods and services at cheaper rate. In this way, secondary sector gradually became the most important sector in regard to total production and employment of the economy. We found a shift from primary sector to the secondary sector in regard to their place and importance in the economy. This process of change did not stop here in the history of developed countries. It moved further and now it shifted from secondary sector to tertiary sector. With the use of advanced technology, very few people are required in the industries to carry on production. Various types of services, activities have emerged, and hence the service sector is expanding very fast in these countries. A very large number of people of developed countries are now working in the service sector. The share of service sector in the GDP has also increased. The service sector has become the most important sector in terms of total production and employment of the developed countries. We find a continuous changes in the importance of different sectors of developed countries in the last 100 years. The general pattern of this change or shift of importance from primary sector to secondary sector and then ultimately to service sector. Now, next, primary, secondary and tertiary sectors in India. Now, the importance of these three sectors from two angles, that is, share in the production of GDP and share in total employment. Now, the share in GDP. It will be useful to know the share of different sectors in our total GDP and the changes that have occurred over the 30 years between 1973 and 2003. We find that lots of changes. During this period, 1973 to 2007, the percentage share of primary sector in India's GDP has fallen, whereas the percentage share of secondary and service sector has risen. The total production in all the three sectors of Indian economy has increased during 1973 to 2007. It has increased most in the service sector. Tertiary sector has now emerged as the biggest producing sector in the Indian economy. As a result of it, the percentage share of service sector has increased day by day. In this way, service sector has become an important sector of Indian economy. There has been a significant shift in favor of services during the last decades. It reflects the structural transformation that normally occurs in an economy as it moves to a somewhat higher level of development. And it should be further encouraged. Impressed by the growth of performance of the services sector in recent years, many economists argue that the future of the Indian economy rests with services-led growth. Now you have to write question and answers in your fair copy. Describe the historical changes in the economic sectors over the last 100 years. What is the importance of the economic activities